Hi, I'm Kathleen and I'm on the team building ODK Central. We are introducing server-managed datasets in version 22.3 and I want to give you a quick preview of what that will look like. So imagine you want to make sure some important old growth trees stay alive and healthy over time. You might first start by identifying those trees and then periodically visiting them to monitor them. Let's take a look at collect, where I have two forms, one for the registration of these trees and one for the follow-up phase. So I'll quickly register a tree. The other form is for when you need to visit the tree later. It has a way to select from existing trees, but the tree we created is not there. We had made a green heart and there's only a purple heart here right now. But I'll show you the steps that someone would take using ODK Central, like back in the office, to create an entity for the tree we just registered, and then we'll be able to automatically use it in this follow-up form without having to do any manual updating of this form. So here are the submissions for the tree registration form. You can see this purple heart that we saw in the map already, and then two green hearts that I've submitted right now. I'm going to approve these submissions. And what's going to happen is that Central is going to automatically create entities for each of these trees using data that was stored in the submissions and in the tree registration form about how to turn those submissions into entities. Then these will be available in the follow-up form automatically. And I can even take a look at the submission feed for this particular submission and get a note that, that an entity was created. Now when we go back to the tree follow-up form, and I'll quickly refresh to make sure we have the latest data, the trees that I just submitted and approved and turned into entities should be there. So there used to be just one tree, but now all three trees that we have as entities are around, and we can select one of them and fill out the follow-up information on it. Yeah, let's take a look at datasets and entities from within Central. So I've started with a fresh project here to show you that in the beginning, there's not going to be any new information about datasets. The way that you enable datasets within Central is by uploading your first form that contains a dataset. So let's look at one of these forms. From our earlier example, we had a form about registering trees. Most of the things about this form are just standard XLS form design, but note that there's a new tab down here called Entities that contains the name of the dataset that we want to populate and how to build the label for each entity. And this can be made out of combining any other form fields that you have. Back on the main sheet that describes the form fields, we have a new Save To column here that you'll want to fill out for any field that you want to save as a property in your dataset. You can pick and choose which form fields you want as dataset properties, and you can also give those properties names that are different from the field names. So for example, a field in our form is named location, but we're saving it as geometry. In this case, species is mapping to species, but circumference is mapping to circumference_cm, and this other field, intake notes, is something that we're not going to save on our entity. Let's see what happens when we upload this form. When you upload the form, Central notices that this form describes a dataset and has three specific properties that it knows how to fill in from form submissions. When we go to publish the form, we'll see more confirmation that in this case, a brand new dataset called trees is being created, and in the dataset trees, there's a new property called circumference cm, a new property geometry, and a new property species. Now that we've published the form, the trees dataset itself is published, which means if we go to the project overview, we'll finally see a tab for datasets. We can click on this, we can get useful information about how the dataset ecosystem works, and we can see our trees dataset here available to download. Although at this point we haven't created any entities, so there's not going to be much data in it. Earlier in this video, I was using collect to fill out the form, but I'm just going to do it all in Enketo right now in the browser. So I've approved some of these submissions already, but just to reiterate, approving a submission is how you turn it into an entity. So your field team will go out and collect data, you'll get a chance to look at it over in Central, and when it checks out and you want that submission to become an entity, you'll go ahead and approve that submission. And it will take a couple seconds, or it'll take some amount of time for Central to come by and process that submission and create an entity, but once it does, you'll be able to see in the submission feed that an entity was created. You'll also be able to go to the project overview page and to the Datasets tab and download your entity data as a CSV. The structure of this CSV file is basically the same as other item set CSV files. There's a name column, label column, and then different properties. And these properties are the dataset properties that you filled out in the dataset creation form. The label is also from there, and the name column here is actually the entity's unique identifier that was also created through the form that made that submission. This is a form that's the follow-up form, and this is also a very standard XLS form. We can see here that we are using this field type called select one from file trees.csv. And ordinarily you would design this kind of form and then upload a file called trees.csv that had the same structure that we just saw. But in this case, all you need to do is use this form and it will automatically link with a data set called trees. So now we're going to upload the trees follow-up form. Let's take a look at the form attachments page. We saw in the form itself that it was going to be referencing a file called trees.csv, but because we have a data set with that exact name, it automatically matched and it linked to the dataset trees. It's important that you have your files exactly match the dataset name, but with the CSV extension. And now this form will be able to pull from that dataset instead of from a CSV file. So now we've got our published tree follow-up form, and we should be able to see the new trees in there. There they are. There's 5 trees. We can, make a selection about any one of these. And if we go back to the tree registration form and we register yet another form, another submission, let's make another Mora here. We'll say it's really big, 400 centimeters. And we go back to our submissions here, we refresh, we approve, we wait just a little bit, we sort of check it out and wait until it becomes an entity. Back on the tree follow-up form, we can refresh and we'll see that latest tree that we just registered. Another thing to know about datasets is that multiple forms can all add entities to the same dataset. They can even define additional properties. Maybe not every form contributes the same set of properties, but they can all add into the same dataset anyway. So just to show you a quick example of that, I've modified my form slightly. Instead of collecting the circumference of a tree, I'm now collecting height. Maybe you have a whole new way of measuring height of trees now, so you've updated your form or you've added a different form for a different type of data collector to use. Over on the side, I've updated the save to for this row as well to match. And I've taken out another property that was in here. That doesn't mean it's going to be removed from the data set, it's just going to mean it's not one of the properties that's filled in by this form. So let's upload this form to Central. We'll upload the draft and we'll see instead of it making a whole new dataset trees, it now says that the dataset trees is updated by this form and it's adding the height property, and this form also references the geometry and species properties that were there before. So that's a brief overview of datasets and entities within ODK Central. We hope that you give it a try. If you have any questions or comments, come find us in the forum at forum.getodk.org. And thanks for watching. Bye.